In South Africa, a certain tribe there has a rather unique way of dealing with sin. You see, whenever someone sins or acts irresponsibly, the Bemba tribe takes that person and brings the whole community together, forming a big, huge circle around that person. And then everyone, every man, woman, and child, one at a time, take turns telling that person about all the good things that they've done in their life, and about all the good qualities that they possess. And that ceremony often goes on for several days until everyone has had a chance to speak, and that all the positive things that can be said are said. Then the circle breaks, and there is this massive, joyous celebration as the person is welcomed back into the tribe. By dealing with sin in that way, the Bemba tribe is basically saying to the person, yes, you sinned, but we believe that you are so much better than that. Yes, you sinned, but we're willing to forgive you and give you another chance. Because we trust that when you come to realize how much we care about you, and when you come to realize how much God cares about you, you're going to want to turn away from sin and make better choices in the future. It's interesting to know that this psalm that we read today from the Bible, Psalm 51, was originally written to deal with King David's sin with regard to the woman named Bathsheba. Do you remember that story? David was the powerful and mighty king of Israel. But one day, while his army was out on the battlefield, he was roaming around the penthouse there in his palace in Jerusalem, surveying his capital city, when all of a sudden, as he looked across the street and through an apartment window, he saw a beautiful woman taking a bath. And so right away he called his advisors and said, go and find out for me who that young woman is, and tell her that I'd like to get to know her. But right away his advisor says, well, sire, that woman is Bathsheba, and she's married to one of your soldiers, a soldier by the name of Uriah. But even when David found out that Bathsheba was already married, that didn't matter to him. Instead, David devised an evil scheme. What David did was he sent orders to his general out on the battlefield for the general to put Uriah at the very forefront of the troops and to yell, charge! But then to quietly tell all of the other soldiers to retreat and to run away in the opposite direction, leaving Uriah out there all by himself to be slaughtered by the enemy. And that's exactly what happened. And so when word finally got back to Jerusalem that Uriah was dead, right away David moved in and took Bathsheba as his wife. But a few days later, one of David's closest advisors, Nathan, came and confronted the king about his sin. And when David realized that his sin was no secret to Nathan, and that his sin was no secret to God, David became deeply ashamed of what he had done and began to pour out his heart to God, asking for mercy. And according to the Bible, even though David had sinned so terribly, God forgave him. basically said to David, yes, you sinned. But I know that you are so much better than that. Yes, you sinned. But I'm willing to forgive you and give you another chance. Because I trust that when you come to realize how much I love you, that you're going to learn to turn away from sin and to make better choices in the future. And as it turned out, by and large, David did learn to turn away from sin and make better choices in his life. As he went on to become Israel's greatest and most faithful king. As he went on to write many of the Psalms that are in the Bible. And as he went on to become known as a man after God's own heart. Yes, sin was a problem in David's life. But God didn't allow that sin to be the final word. And it's been the same throughout history. Many people have gone on to do great things for God because God didn't allow the sin in their lives to be the final word for them either. Consider, for instance, Martin Luther. Martin Luther was the great church leader in the 1500s who led the Protestant Reformation. But Martin Luther was incredibly anti-Semitic. Luther hated Jewish people. In fact, he went so far as to even encourage his fellow Germans to burn Jewish homes to the ground and force Jews to live in stables with the animals. Yes, Martin Luther sinned. But God knew that he was so much better than that. In other words, God did not allow Martin Luther's sin to be the final word in his life. Or consider Martin Luther's 20th century namesake, Martin Luther King Jr. As you may or may not be aware, Martin Luther King Jr. admitted to adultery. He admitted to cheating on his wife. And it was later found out that he was also guilty of plagiarism. He had copied and stolen major parts of his doctoral dissertation from the work of another student. Yes, Martin Luther King Jr. sinned. But God knew that he was so much better than that. And so God didn't allow Martin Luther King Jr.'s sin to be the final word in his life.